Hi and welcome to another Memories Made video. I'm designer Jen Gallacher, and in this month's series I am concentrating on color inspiration. And the inspiration piece today is a graphic that I found online. And so I wanted to talk about how ads can influence and inspire you color-wise. So I loved the fun coral oranges, mustard yellows, and blues in this collection, as well as the browns. And I have had this pinned in my Pinterest board for quite some time, and I wanted to do something with it. But this particular graphic is somewhat modern in style, and the page I wanted to do, I wanted to give it a little bit of a vintage vibe. So here's the trick. So I take the modern piece and I go in search of a collection or a pattern paper. I almost always start with a pattern paper that matches this color scheme. And I came up with a fun solution, and this is a new collection from Crate Paper. And you can see it has some of the same deep oranges. This is called Close Knit, and it has a lot of these vintage sewing pieces and vintage things. So I took a modern looking graphic and I found a pattern paper to inspire the rest of the layout. So then the question becomes what to do with the photo, because if we're starting with colors, sometimes the photo isn't going to match. And this is the answer. You change the photo to black and white. And the reason why I knew that this was going to work is the original photo was blurred and a little bit washed out and overexposed. And by color correcting it, by making it black and white, I knew that this collection was going to work. So you pick an inspiration piece, you go in search of colors, pattern papers, and embellishments that will match the inspiration piece. And then if your photo is not already in the same colors, you change it to black and white, or if you have a photo that's having color issues, change it to black and white. You can do this at home, or you can have your photo lab do it for you. So let's go ahead and make a layout. So using the graphic as inspiration, let's make the layout using some of these vintage pattern papers. Now this first pattern paper is from Studio Calico, but it has a nice vintage wood grain look to it. And this particular pattern paper is from Pebbles, and it has a barely there stitch design, which I thought worked with the kind of sewing theme that I'm using. So we'll go ahead and attach this to the bottom part, the top part of the layout. Then from that same Crate Paper collection, you can see that it has some vintage silhouettes on it. This is a fun green pattern paper that I wanted to use. And we'll go ahead and trim this down a little bit. And it's that same rich green from the graphic that I selected. So again, the graphic serves as inspiration, and I go shop my supplies and I find things that will work for this layout. I'm just going to layer some pattern paper, so I'm not going to do it exactly perfect. Then on top is another pattern paper from Pebbles. It has dots on one side and a script hello on the other. And to the bottom of this strip, I'm going to attach a craft colored border strip that I've punched using a notebook border punch. I often add a little bit of border punches to my layouts. You'll notice that I didn't try and cover the entire border, and I did that on purpose. Then I want to show you in the graphic again some of the colors we're working with. There is blue. I also brought in a hint of green, some mustard yellows, and some browns. And to bring in that orange down at the bottom, I'm going to use some orange washi tape. And this will help draw that color down to the bottom of the layout. So any kind of embellishment that is in this color scheme will work for the layout that we're going to create. To the top of the layout, I'm going to use an album sheet in that orange color. On the one side, it has a kind of a telephone thing on the other side, and I'm going to bring in the orange by using this piece. You could also cut a piece of pattern paper for this particular step. We're just adding some layers. Then there is the photo. It is a 4x6" photo that I printed at home, and it does have a white border around the edge of it. And then at the top here, from a 6x6 paper pad, I'm going to use a script pattern paper. And I'm using a 6x6 paper pad because it is a little bit smaller of a scale than a full 12x12 sheet. And I'm just going to create a border at the top of it. And then we'll go ahead and add that to the layout. See See, I'm just kind of layering and adding different elements. One thing that I like to keep on hand are doilies, and some companies make these. You can also cut these with your silhouette machine. To save them so that I'm not wasting any part of it, a lot of times I'll only use half the doily. So I'll use my paper trimmer and I will trim it so that the scallops, it cuts through the scallops. So you can see that I've cut through the scallop. And then I can add this at the top of the photo. And they are very fragile, so when you are adding adhesive to them, make sure that you're gentle because you could end up ripping them. Now this particular crepe paper, or rather this particular crepe paper collection has some fun ephemera to it, a lot of sewing things. I'm going to go ahead and use this Memories in the Making, and again I only want to use the top half. So save the bottom half for another project. It's a great way to stretch your supplies. And that just allows you to only use what you need. And I only wanted the memories thing showing. Now I cut from the cutout pattern paper some tags, and what I will do is I will add some texture to it with some twine. And one thing that you can do on this particular spool one is to take some baker's twine. This is some brown baker's twine. And you can wrap it around the tag several times. This is great for leftover ribbon, and I'm going to add quite a bit to it to make it nice and thick. And then I can tie this off into a bow. I'm looking for things to add to the sewing theme, and the twine around the spool made me think of sewing. Then something else that makes me think of sewing are pins, and those of you that have sewn know all about using pins to hold patterns, and I'm simply pinning it through the paper, and I go down through a little bit and come back up, and that gives me kind of a fun sewing element. I'm going to go ahead and add as well to the top of each of these tags some additional twine, and you can do that with a bow, you can do that with a knot, you can even do a loose tied tag like this simply by leaving your finger in place to keep it loose. And you can do that for all three tags. This allows it to look a little bit more authentic. So even though it was just from a sheet of 12 by 12 inch pattern paper, I have cut them out and I add elements to them to make them look like an embellishment that I bought. So a pre-made tag. So dress up your cutout pieces as best you can, and it'll give them a little bit more dimension, make them look a little bit more interesting on your layout. So again, we'll tie this one loose. And you can do this with ribbon, you could do this with just crochet twine, whatever you have on hand. And you can see that on the back of this particular pattern paper, again, it was a 12 by 12 inch pattern paper, it was a wood grain. Just going to layer these. I usually work in threes. And because this one is a little bit thicker, I'm going to use glue dots because it has heavier elements on it. From the same ephemera pack, you can see some of the little ephemera pieces. There is a spool top and a paper button, and we will add these as well. You can use glue dots if you prefer. And then for the title, I wanted something that was dimensional and had some presence on the page. And there are, from Dear Lizzie, some new wood veneer cutouts, and they come in shapes as well as titles, and I really liked the title look on here. So I'm going to use smaller glue dots to adhere that to my layout. And I'll simply place them on some of the back of the cut. You could ink these to change the colors. You could color them with Copic markers. They don't have to stay the same. You could even paint them. So whatever you want to do to alter them and make your own, I'm going to leave them a nice natural wood grain color. Just overlap the tags here. Now for the journaling, I simply printed out on some more of that craft cardstock. We're going to go ahead and ink the edges to distress it a little bit. This makes it look a little bit more vintage, which is what I'm going for. You could also handwrite your journaling anywhere on the layout. It's just a personal style choice. At the top of the photo, I have some chipboard arrows that are from a new Amy Tangerine collection. And I selected the ones that matched this crepe paper collection. And what I'll do is I'll cut out the backing of the sticker. You've seen me do this before. And then I'll place it down with the backing. So I kind of get a feel for how it's going to look on my page. That way I'm spared from putting something down and then not liking how it turns out. So again, working in threes. More Pebbles stickers. This one is a label sticker. And I will attach this to the top of the orange. And then from the pattern paper, from the crepe paper pattern paper that contained the tags, it also has word strips. And I am going to slightly bend it and cut it into a pennant. I also cut it so it was a little bit less wide, so that it wouldn't take up so much space on this label that I'm using. So you can see it's going to go right across there. So I kind of cut it out, laid it down, looked at it, and determined that I wanted a little bit more thin. And then I want to continue building up this particular section. So I have a little sticker that says "Let's Celebrate" in the green that I've been using. And we're going to go ahead and add that to the top of the XOXO. And if it's a little bit too long, don't be afraid to cut it down to a size that works better for you. I almost always change my embellishments so they work exactly for the project I'm working on. And then something fun that we're seeing a lot of are sequins. And I like this yellow. I wanted to bring some more of this yellow onto the page, and so to do that I'm going to use sequins. You could also use enamel dots if you prefer that. You could add some machine stitching to the perimeter of this layout to re-emphasize the theme of sewing that I've been using. So it just adds a pop of color. Then something that I often do is I add photo corners. So just to bring some of that craft cardstock color to the top, I have some Canson photo corners, and they are self-adhesive. So let's go back and look at the inspiration piece. Again, the piece itself is quite modern, but you can see that I brought in some of the elements. You'll notice that instead of using the blue, that I chose to substitute a green. And I knew that that would work because there are colors that are very nature inspired. The oranges and the browns seem fall, so I knew green would also work because those occur in nature. Then from the inspiration piece, I took a vintage collection and I built a layout around it. So inspiration is all around you. Be sure to visit my blog for additional inspiration and subscribe to my YouTube channel so you don't miss out on any of these videos.